My name is Emma Parker, and at 32, I've built my real estate empire in Boston from nothing but determination and grit. My relationship with my parents has always been rocky, especially with my mother, who never believed in my dreams. When my sister Rachel announced her wedding, I was excited for her but dreaded the family reunion. Little did I know that my penthouse, the symbol of everything I've worked for, would become the center of a family war. Before I tell you how my own mother slapped me at my sister's wedding, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how I turned this family nightmare into the most satisfying moment of my life. I've always been the odd one out in my family. While most parents hang their children's artwork on the refrigerator, mine scrutinized every imperfection. "Why can't you draw inside the lines like Rachel?" they'd ask. That was the recurring theme of my childhood. Why couldn't I be more like my perfect younger sister? Growing up in suburban Connecticut, my parents Margaret and Richard Parker had very specific ideas about success. Dad was a banking executive who expected his daughters to follow traditional paths: marriage to successful men, modest careers that wouldn't interfere with family obligations, and most importantly, maintaining appearances within their social circle. Mom was a former beauty queen who transitioned into being the quintessential homemaker, hosting dinner parties where she'd showcase Rachel's achievements while glossing over mine. Rachel was the golden child from day one, 3 years younger than me, with our mother's classic beauty, perfect grades, and a natural talent for playing by the rules. I, on the other hand, was stubborn, independent, and drawn to business from a young age. When other kids set up lemonade stands, I created pricing tiers, loyalty programs, and expanded to 3 locations by recruiting neighborhood kids as employees. My parents called it excessive and unladylike. College was where our paths truly diverged. Rachel attended an Ivy League school with our parents footing the entire bill: tuition, apartment, spending money, even a new car as a freshman. Year gift. Meanwhile, I chose a state university with a strong business program and worked 3 jobs simultaneously: morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening waitressing, and weekend work as a real estate assistant, where I discovered my passion. Real estate isn't a proper career for a Parker woman, my mother informed me during my junior year. It's so transactional. Why not something more suitable, like teaching or nursing? When I graduated with honors and announced I was getting my real estate license instead of applying to graduate school like Rachel, my father simply sighed and said, "Well, at least we have one daughter who won't disappoint us." Those words fueled me. Over the next decade, I built my business brick by brick. Started as an agent specializing in downtown Boston properties, saved every commission, lived in a tiny studio apartment with a mattress on the floor, and eventually made my first investment purchase, a rundown duplex that I renovated myself. On weekends, 1 property became 2, then 5, then a small portfolio. I took calculated risks, weathered the market fluctuations, and established a reputation for integrity and results. Last year, I finally achieved my dream: purchasing a stunning penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a private rooftop terrace, and the satisfaction of knowing I earned every square inch through my own sweat and determination. The first night I spent there, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights, crying tears of pride and vindication. I'd made it, despite everyone who doubted me. Rachel took a different path. After getting her master's degree, parent-funded, she worked briefly at a prestigious marketing firm before meeting Tyler Blackwood at a charity gala. Tyler was 33, impossibly handsome, and heir to the Blackwood shipping fortune. Within 6 months they were engaged, and suddenly my parents had even more reason to compare us. "When are you going to find someone, Emma?" my mother would ask during our infrequent calls. "You're not getting any younger, and your sister is marrying into the Blackwood family." The wedding invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope with gold embossing 3 months ago. A weekend-long celebration at the Blackwoods' Hamptons estate, black tie, with events spanning from Friday to Sunday. My stomach knotted as I read it, knowing what lay ahead. 3 days of subtle and not-so-subtle comparisons, judgmental comments about my career and single status, and the exhausting performance of pretending my family dynamics were normal. "You have to go," my best friend Jasmine insisted over wine at my place. "Rachel's still your sister, and you don't want to regret missing it." Jasmine had been my rock through everything, the only person who truly understood what I dealt with. In my family. "I know," I sighed, running my finger along the edge of the invitation, but every time I see them, I leave feeling like that insecure little girl again, like nothing I accomplish will ever be enough. "Then don't go as that girl," Jasmine said, firmly. "Go as the badass businesswoman who owns 6 properties and a penthouse that would make them drool. You have nothing to prove to them, Emma." She was right, of course. So I RSVP'd yes, bought a stunning designer dress in a bold red that my mother would certainly disapprove of, and prepared myself emotionally for the weekend. What I couldn't prepare for was the bomb my parents were about to drop, one that would change everything. As the wedding weekend approached, I packed carefully, including documents I needed to review for an upcoming property closing. Success was my armor, and I intended to wear it proudly. Boarding the train to the Hamptons, I had no idea I was walking into a trap disguised as a family celebration, or that by the end of the weekend, the already fragile relationship with my parents would shatter beyond repair. The Blackwood estate took my breath away despite my determination to remain unimpressed. Sprawling grounds led to a magnificent colonial revival mansion with white columns and a view of the Atlantic that probably cost more than most of my properties combined. The driveway was lined with luxury cars as staff directed arriving guests. I straightened my shoulders, grabbed my weekend bag, and stepped out of the taxi with the confidence I'd cultivated in countless business negotiations. "Emma!" The familiar voice made me turn. Rachel rushed toward me in a flowing sundress, looking radiant. Whatever issues existed between us, the genuine happiness on her face when she hugged me was undeniable. "You made it! I wasn't sure you would." "Of course I came," I said, returning her embrace. "It's your wedding." Well, Emma finally decided to join us. My mother's voice cut through the moment like ice. Margaret Parker approached in a designer outfit that probably cost more than she could afford, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We were beginning to think your little apartment buildings were too important to leave." And there it was, not even 5 minutes before the first dig. "Hello, Mother," I replied evenly, accepting her air kiss. "The property portfolios are doing very well, thank you for asking." My father appeared behind her, giving me a stiff hug. "Emma, glad you could fit family into your schedule." I bit back a retort about the numerous family events I'd attended alone while they vacationed or attended Rachel's various celebrations. This weekend wasn't about old wounds. I was here, for my sister. The Blackwoods were exactly as I'd imagined. Old money confidence wrapped in Nantucket red pants and tennis sweaters. Tyler's parents, Elizabeth and William, greeted me with practiced warmth while subtly assessing everything from my clothes to my posture. Tyler himself seemed genuinely happy to meet me, though I caught the slight surprise in his eyes when Rachel mentioned my real estate company. "Your own company?" he repeated. "That's impressive." Before I could respond, my mother laughed lightly. "Oh, Emma likes to keep busy with her little ventures. Rachel has always been our family-focused one." The rehearsal dinner that evening was an elegant affair in the estate's garden. Crystal glasses caught the light of the setting sun as waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I sat at a table with distant cousins and friends of the Blackwoods, acutely aware of my parents seated at the main table, occasionally glancing my way with expressions ranging from disappointment to annoyance. "So, which Parker sister are you?" asked an elderly woman dripping in pearls. "I'm Emma, Rachel's older sister." "Ah," she nodded knowingly. "Margaret was just telling me about you. Something about apartments? It's wonderful you have a little Hobby to keep yourself occupied. I nearly choked on my champagne. A hobby that paid for my penthouse and financial independence. Before I could correct her, I was saved by the arrival of a man who took the empty seat beside me. You look like you could use a conversation that doesn't include the words wedding colors or floral arrangements, he said with a warm smile. I'm James Blackwood, Tyler's cousin and fellow black sheep. James was refreshingly different from the other guests. Intelligent eyes, a subtle sense of humor, and no wedding ring. As we talked, I learned he was an architect who had scandalized the family by working for a firm instead of living off the trust fund. We shared stories of family pressure and forging our own paths until my mother interrupted. Emma, dear, could I speak with you for a moment? She asked with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. I excused myself and followed her to a quiet corner of the garden. I hope you're not planning to mention your work to everyone you meet, she said, adjusting her diamond bracelet. The Blackwoods are old money. They wouldn't understand your situation. My situation? I repeated. Being unmarried and working in sales at your age. She said it like I had a terminal disease. I own a company, Mother. I'm not a sales clerk. She waved dismissively. Speaking of ownership, tell me about your apartment situation in Boston. Rachel mentioned you bought some fancy place. The sudden interest in my living arrangements should have been a red flag, but I was too busy defending my career to notice. It's a penthouse overlooking the harbor, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. 3 bedrooms, private roof terrace, floor-to-ceiling windows. I closed on it last year. Something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, maybe even envy. 3 bedrooms? For just you? Seems excessive. I use one as a home office. The other is for guests. She looked me over critically. Well, I suppose we should get back to the important people. Try not to monopolize anyone's time with talk about mortgage rates, dear. As she walked away, I noticed my father in an intense discussion with William Blackwood, his face flushed with what looked like embarrassment. I caught fragments about investments and temporary setback before they noticed me and abruptly changed the subject. The evening wound down, and as guests dispersed to their assigned rooms in the mansion or nearby cottages, I texted Jasmine. Something weird is going on. Mom actually asked about my penthouse, and Dad looks stressed. Wish you were here to decode? The Parker family drama. Her reply came quickly. Eyes open, armor on. Whatever they're planning, you're stronger than they think. I fell asleep in the luxurious guest cottage with a sense of unease. The next morning would bring not only my sister's wedding, but a confrontation that would change everything. Morning sunlight streamed through the cottage windows as I applied the finishing touches to my makeup. The wedding was scheduled for 2 o'clock, with photos beforehand. I'd chosen a deep emerald gown that complemented my eyes and projected the confidence I needed to get through the day. A knock at the door revealed Rachel, already in her robe with her hair partially done, looking radiant but nervous. Can I hide out here for a few minutes? She asked. Mom's driving me crazy with last-minute suggestions. I laughed and ushered her in. Some things never change. For a brief moment, it felt like when we were girls, before the competition and comparisons drove us apart. Rachel flopped onto my bed with a dramatic sigh. Thank you for coming, Em. I know it couldn't have been an easy decision. You're my sister, I said simply, despite everything. She studied me for a moment. You look really good, happy, successful. There was a note of something in her voice, not quite envy, but recognition. I am happy, I confirmed. The business is thriving. My penthouse is everything I dreamed of, and I've made peace with charting my own course. Rachel nodded slowly. That's the difference between us, I think. You never needed their approval like I did. Before I could respond, another knock interrupted us. My father's voice called through the door. Emma? Your mother and I need to speak? With you. Family meeting in the Blue Suite in 10 minutes. Rachel and I exchanged glances. Do you know what this is about? I asked. She looked away too quickly. No idea. Maybe wedding stuff? The Blue Suite was in the main house, an elegant sitting room where the Blackwoods conducted business. When I arrived, my parents were already there, my mother pacing while my father sat stiffly on an antique sofa. Close the door, Emma, my father instructed. His voice had the same authoritative tone he'd used throughout my childhood when delivering disappointments disguised as life lessons. What's going on? I asked, remaining standing. Something about their demeanor made me wary of sitting, of being in a lower position. My mother stopped pacing. We need to discuss something important, a family matter. We've been meaning to talk to you about this for some time, my father continued. But given the celebrations, we thought it would be best to wait until we were together in person. My mother nodded. Emma, you know we've always been proud of our standing in the community. The Parker name means something. I resisted rolling my eyes. The preamble about family reputation always preceded bad news. The thing is, my father said, clearing his throat, we've had some financial setbacks, investments that didn't perform as expected, the market downturn, various factors. That explained the tense conversation with William Blackwood. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously, but I'm not sure what this has to do with me. They exchanged glances. We've had to make some difficult decisions, my mother continued, including selling the house. That caught me by surprise. The Connecticut home had been in our family for generations. You're selling the house? Where will you live? The moment hung in the air as they looked at me expectantly. When I didn't immediately offer what they were waiting for, my father spelled it out. That's what we need to discuss with you, Emma. We'll need a place to stay for a while. A year or two until we get back on our feet? I still wasn't understanding. There are plenty of nice rental properties in Connecticut. I could help you find something within your budget. My mother laughed, a short, harsh sound. We're not talking about renting some anonymous apartment. We're talking about your penthouse. The words hit me like a physical blow. My penthouse? You want to move into my home? It makes perfect sense, my father said, as if explaining something obvious. You have 3 bedrooms, far more space than a single person needs. We're your parents. Family helps family. I stared at them, waiting for some indication they were joking. There was none. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to give you my penthouse? The home I worked for years to afford? Where would I live? My mother waved dismissively. You could easily rent something smaller, or stay with a friend. It's not like you have a husband and children to consider. Another dig, but I was too shocked by their request to feel the sting. That's not going to happen. The penthouse is my home. I'm not giving it up. My father leaned forward. Emma, be reasonable. We're not asking forever, just until we resolve our situation. Which you said could be years, I pointed out. And why can't you rent something yourselves? Because we're your parents, my mother snapped. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back when we need help? Everything you've done for me? I repeated incredulously. You paid for Rachel's education, her apartment, her car. I worked 3 jobs through college and built my business without a cent from either of you. In fact, you actively discouraged me every step of the way. The door opened and Rachel entered, looking concerned. What's going on? I could hear you, from the hallway. Your sister is refusing to help her own parents, my mother said dramatically. We've asked to stay in her penthouse temporarily, and she's turning us away like strangers. Rachel looked at me with disappointment. Emma, seriously? It's just an apartment. They're our parents. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's not just an apartment. It's my home. The home I earned while you were getting everything handed to you. That's not fair, Rachel protested. None of this is fair, I countered. They're asking me to give up my home because of their financial mistakes. Would you give up your new life with Tyler if they asked? Would they even ask you? That's different, my mother interjected. Rachel is starting a family. You're alone. By choice, I said firmly. And my answer is no. I won't give up my penthouse. But I'm happy to help you find a rental within your budget or connect you with a financial advisor. My mother's face contorted with rage. After everything we've sacrificed for you, you're ungrateful, selfish. The slap came out of nowhere, my mother's hand connecting with my cheek with enough force to snap my head to the side. The sound echoed in the quiet room, followed by Rachel's shocked gasp. My cheek burned as I raised my hand to it, staring at my mother in disbelief. In 32 years, she had never struck me. Margaret! My father stood, looking uncomfortable but making no move to defend me. Rachel stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, but said nothing. Without a word, I turned and walked out, tears threatening, but not falling. In the hallway, I nearly collided with James, who took one look at my face and the red mark forming on my cheek. Emma, what happened? I brushed past him, needing air, needing distance, needing to process the fact that my own mother had just slapped me for refusing to give up my home. The garden behind the Blackwood mansion became my sanctuary as I struggled to compose myself. My cheek still burned, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional betrayal. The garden was mercifully empty, everyone busy with wedding preparations. I found a stone bench partially hidden by a towering hedge and sank onto it, finally allowing the tears to fall. Emma? James's voice was gentle as he approached cautiously, holding 2 glasses of water. I thought you might need this. I accepted the water gratefully, using my free hand to wipe away tears. Thank you. He sat beside me, keeping a respectful distance. I don't want to intrude, but are you okay? You look like you've been through hell. A laugh escaped me, brittle and harsh. Family drama. Apparently, I'm the worst daughter in history because I won't give my parents my penthouse. His eyebrows rose. They asked you to give them your home? The penthouse in Boston you mentioned last night? I nodded, taking a sip of water. They've had financial setbacks and expect me to hand over my keys and find somewhere else to live for a year or 2. When I refused, my mother slapped me. Jesus, he murmured. I don't even know what to say. There's nothing to say. They've always favored Rachel, but I never thought they'd go this far. I checked my phone. Less than 2 hours until the ceremony. I should just leave. Go back to Boston. Is that what you want to do? I considered it. Part of me desperately wanted to escape, to return to my safe haven and lick my wounds. But another part, the stubborn, proud part, refused to be driven away. No, I said finally. I came for Rachel. I'll stay for the ceremony and early reception, then make my exit. I won't give them the satisfaction of running me off entirely. James nodded. For what it's worth, I think that's brave, and if you need an ally in there, I've got your back. His kindness nearly undid me again. Thank you, I managed. I returned to my cottage to repair my makeup, covering the faint mark on my cheek, and steeled myself for what lay ahead. When I entered the ceremony area, my parents were already seated, in the front row. My mother turned, saw me, and deliberately looked away. My father pretended not to notice me at all. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Rachel was radiant as she walked down the aisle, and despite everything, I felt genuine happiness for her when she and Tyler exchanged vows. I performed my duties as bridesmaid mechanically, smiling for photos and offering congratulations, all while maintaining careful distance from my parents. At the reception, I was seated at the family table as protocol demanded, but might as well have been invisible. My mother engaged animatedly with the Blackwoods on her other side, while my father, discussed business with Tyler's uncle across the table. Neither acknowledged my presence. "I hear Emma is quite the real estate mogul," Elizabeth Blackwood commented during dinner. "Tyler mentioned you own several properties in Boston." Before I could answer, my mother cut in. "Oh, Emma dabbles in real estate? Nothing serious. Just a way to fill her time until she settles down." The dismissal stung, but I'd heard variations my entire life. What I wasn't prepared for was what I overheard as I returned from the restroom, passing a group of my parents' friends. "Poor Margaret and Richard," one woman was saying. "Their eldest is such a disappointment. Did you hear she refused to help them in their time of need, after all they've done for her?" "So selfish," another agreed. Rachel was always the sweet one. Emma's just so ambitious, not really family-oriented at all. My mother had already begun spreading her version of events, casting me as the villain. I returned to the table, feeling ill. The final blow came during toasts. My father stood, glass raised, and spoke eloquently about Rachel, her achievements, her kind heart, her perfect match in Tyler. He concluded with, "A parent couldn't ask for a more loving, supportive daughter." The implication was clear to anyone who knew the situation. I was the unloving, unsupportive daughter, the failure. As applause filled the room, I quietly slipped my phone from my purse and texted, "Rachel, congratulations again. You and Tyler are perfect together. I'm not feeling well and need to head out. Love you." I gathered my small clutch and made my way toward the exit, hoping to leave without further confrontation. But James noticed and followed me to the foyer. "Leaving already?" I nodded, exhaustion evident in my voice. I can't do this anymore. The silent treatment, the lies they're spreading about me, the constant reminders that I'll never be the daughter they wanted. "They're wrong, you know," he said quietly. "From everything I've seen, you're extraordinary. Smart, successful, compassionate. Even now, you're thinking about your sister's feelings when most people would have caused a scene." "What happened?" I asked suddenly. "My parents mentioned financial problems, but they've always been careful with money. Dad was a banker, for God's sake." James hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but there's been talk. Your father made some high-risk investments trying to keep up with the Blackwoods and other families in their circle. Vacation homes, luxury cars, private school for Rachel, club memberships, the appearance of wealth without the substance to back it up. It made a terrible kind of sense. The emphasis on appearances, the pressure to maintain social standing, the resentment of my practical career choice. Thank you for telling me, and for being kind today when I really needed it." "Will you be okay getting back to Boston?" he asked. I nodded. "I've already called a car. I just need to get home, to my penthouse, and figure out next steps." "Can I call you sometime, when all this has blown over?" Despite everything, I found myself smiling. I'd like that. As the car pulled away from the Blackwood estate, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief for the family relationships that might be permanently damaged, but also a growing sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I was seeing my parents, clearly, without the filter of obligation or hope for their approval. And in that clarity, I found the beginning of freedom. The drive back to Boston gave me hours to process what had happened. Whenever tears threatened, I reminded myself that I'd done nothing wrong. I'd worked hard for my success, offered reasonable help within boundaries, and stood my ground when faced with unreasonable demands. Still, 3 decades of seeking parental approval couldn't be erased in a single car ride. My penthouse welcomed me home with its sweeping views and peaceful silence. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of wine, and called Jasmine. "You're back early," she answered. "Wedding disaster?" "You have no idea." I recounted everything. The financial revelation, the demand for my penthouse, the slap, and the character assassination that followed. Those manipulative, entitled. Jasmine's outrage on my behalf was comforting. Please tell me you told them to go to hell. I just left. Didn't even say goodbye. Good. And your sister? What did she do when your mother slapped you? The memory stung freshly. Nothing. She stood there in shock but didn't defend me. Then at the reception, she acted like nothing had happened. Unbelievable. Though I'm not surprised. She spent her whole life as the golden child. Speaking up would mean losing her position. We talked for over an hour, Jasmine helping me work through the shock and betrayal. Before hanging up, she said, "Take care of yourself, Em. Whatever happens next, remember you've built an amazing life without their help or approval." The next few days passed in a blur of work and emotional processing. I threw myself into finalizing a commercial property deal, grateful for the distraction. On Wednesday, Rachel called. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to hear whatever justifications she might offer. Her message was brief and awkward. "Hey, it's me, just checking in. The honeymoon is amazing, but I've been thinking about what happened. Mom and Dad told everyone you left because you weren't feeling well, but anyway, call me when you... Dan." Translation. Our parents were maintaining appearances, as always. I didn't call back. By the weekend, I'd begun to find my equilibrium again. Then the first email arrived from my mother. "Emma, we're disappointed by your behavior at the wedding and your continued silence. We've told the family you're having a difficult time and need space, but this childish tantrum can't continue. We need to discuss the penthouse situation. Your father is looking at properties to sell, but it will take time. We expect to move in by the end of the month. Please send the spare keys and garage access code." The breathtaking entitlement stunned me. No apology for the slap, no acknowledgement of my feelings or rights, just the expectation that I would comply with their demands. I didn't respond. 3 more emails followed over the next 2 days, each more demanding than the last. Then my father called, leaving a voicemail that attempted a different angle. "Emma, your mother is distraught over this situation. Her blood pressure is elevated, and the doctor is concerned about the stress. As her daughter, you have a responsibility to help. This continued refusal is causing real harm to her health. Call us immediately to arrange the move." The emotional manipulation was so transparent. It was almost laughable. Almost. A text from Rachel arrived next. "Mom and Dad say you're ignoring them. They're really stressed about where they're going to live. Can't you at least talk to them?" I finally responded to her. "They demanded my home, Mom slapped me when I refused, and now they're trying to manipulate me with guilt. Would you give up your new home with Tyler if they demanded it?" Her reply was telling. "That's different. Tyler and I are married. You're just one person in a huge penthouse. Just one person." The implication being that my life, my space, my needs were less valid because I was single. "My answer is no," I texted back, "and I'm disappointed you can't see how wrong their behavior is." What pushed me over the edge was discovering through a mutual friend that my parents had been telling extended family I had promised them my penthouse months ago, then cruelly changed my mind at the last minute, leaving them homeless. The victim narrative was complete. Poor parents betrayed by selfish daughter. That night, I made a decision. I would no longer be reactive, always defending against their latest accusation or demand. It was time to take control of the situation. First, I consulted with my attorney, Adam Cohen, explaining the situation and my concerns about potential harassment. "Based on what you've described, you have grounds for a cease and desist letter regarding the communications," he advised. "As for the penthouse, it's solely in your name, correct? No family money involved in the purchase?" "None. I earned every cent myself." "Then legally, they have no claim whatsoever. But family situations can get messy. Do you want me to draft the cease and desist?" I considered it. "Not yet. I want to try one more approach first, but I may need it as backup." Next, I contacted a financial advisor colleague, Lisa Martinez, who specialized in helping people recover from financial difficulties. I need information on resources for older adults facing financial hardship, I explained. Affordable housing, options, debt counseling, retirement planning for those who've lost significant assets. Lisa provided a comprehensive list of resources, including several nonprofits that specialized in helping seniors with housing transitions. I compiled everything into a folder, adding information on modest rental properties in Connecticut that would be within a reasonable budget. Finally, I did something I'd never done before. I researched my parents' financial situation more thoroughly. Public records showed their house had a second mortgage taken out 3 years ago. A tax lien had been filed against my father last year. Credit checks revealed multiple maxed-out credit cards. The picture was clear. They hadn't experienced a sudden financial setback. They'd been living beyond their means for years, maintaining appearances while drowning in debt. Armed with knowledge and resources, I formulated my plan. Not a plan for revenge, despite how they'd treated me, but a plan to establish firm boundaries while offering genuine help, just not the kind they were demanding. They've spent years making me feel small, I told Jasmine over dinner at my place. Making me doubt myself. But I'm done being the family scapegoat. I'm done feeling guilty for my success or apologizing for not meeting their expectations. So what are you going to do? She asked. I looked out at the Boston skyline from my penthouse windows, the view I'd earned through years of hard work and determination. I'm going to take back my narrative, I said, and help them find a path forward that doesn't involve taking over my life. By Monday morning, I felt a new sense of resolve. I was no longer the desperate-to-please daughter or the defensive victim. I was Emma Parker, successful businesswoman, making decisions from a position of strength. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. My new approach began with a simple but powerful change. I stopped responding to my parents directly and instead had all communication go through my assistant or attorney. When they called, Megan, my assistant, politely informed them I was unavailable, but would respond through appropriate channels. When they emailed demands about the penthouse, Adam replied with formal language establishing that there was no agreement regarding my property and no intention to create one. The change in dynamics was immediate and dramatic. Without direct access to manipulate my emotions, my parents escalated their tactics, which played right into my strategy of documenting everything. A week after the wedding, they showed up unannounced at my building with suitcases. "Ms. Parker isn't expecting visitors," said Antonio, the building security manager, whom I'd briefed on the situation. "We're her parents," my mother declared, imperiously. "We don't need an invitation." "I'm afraid that's not how our security protocol works, ma'am. All visitors must be authorized by residents." When Antonio called up, I confirmed I would not be receiving them. From my window, I watched as they argued with him, my mother gesturing dramatically, my father attempting to look authoritative. Eventually, they left, but not before my mother shouted loudly enough for several residents to hear that I was abandoning my family in their time of need. The next escalation came through extended family. My phone filled with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all variations on the theme of, "How could you do this to your parents?" I responded to each with the same calm message. "I understand. You're concerned. There's more to the situation than you may have been told. I've offered Mom and Dad help finding appropriate housing and financial counseling, but I am not in a position to give them my home. I hope you can respect that this is a private matter between us." Some backed off immediately, surprised by my side of the story. Others doubled down, revealing just how effective my parents' campaign had been. My Aunt Patricia, my father's sister and someone I'd always respected, called me directly. "Emma, I've known you since you were born. You've always been strong-willed, but this is beyond the pale. Your parents gave you everything, and now in their hour of need, you turn your back?" It was time to set the record straight, at least with someone who might listen. "Aunt Patricia, Did they tell you Mom slapped me at Rachel's wedding? Or that they've been lying to everyone about me promising them my penthouse months ago? Or that while they paid for Rachel's education, car, and apartment, I worked 3 jobs through college without a cent of help from them? Silence on the line. I love them because they're my parents, I continued, but they've spent my entire life making me feel less than. Now they're facing the consequences of financial decisions they made, and instead of accepting my offer of help finding appropriate solutions, they're demanding I give up my home and spreading lies about me. That's the full story. More silence then. Your mother slapped you? At the wedding? Yes. When I refused to give them my penthouse right before the ceremony, Rachel witnessed it. I had no idea. They said you were being difficult about lending them your spare rooms while their house sale went through. They never mentioned... Exactly. They're not telling the whole truth. I'm happy to help them, but I won't be manipulated or bullied, and I won't give up my home. That conversation marked a turning point. Aunt Patricia, respected in the family for her fairness, began asking questions. Other relatives started calling with a different tone, apologizing for jumping to conclusions. Meanwhile, I continued building my documentation file, emails, texts, voicemails, security footage from my building, and accounts from witnesses to my mother's public scenes. I wasn't sure if I'd need it, but preparation had always been my strength. 3 weeks after the wedding, the situation came to a head. My cousin Michael was hosting a family gathering for his son's high school graduation. I hadn't planned to attend, knowing my parents would be there, but Aunt Patricia called, specifically to ask me to come. They're telling everyone wild stories, Emma. It's time they faced you directly, with family present who can see the truth. She was right. Hiding away was only allowing their narrative to flourish. So I prepared thoroughly, bringing copies of the resources I'd compiled for them and steeling myself for confrontation. The gathering was at Michael's suburban home, a cookout in the backyard with about 30 relatives. When I arrived, conversations stuttered and eyes turned my way. My mother, holding court near the grill, visibly stiffened. Aunt Patricia immediately came to greet me, linking her arm through mine in a clear show of support. "I'm glad you came," she said loudly enough for others to hear. I moved through the gathering, greeting relatives warmly, refusing to play the villain role I'd been cast in. When my father approached, his expression was stern but cautious. "Emma, I'm surprised to see you here." "Hello, Dad. How have you been?" "How do you think? Your mother and I are still living in a hotel while we figure out next steps. Steps that would be unnecessary if our daughter wasn't being so stubborn." Several nearby relatives were listening openly now. I kept my voice calm and measured. "I've sent you information on several affordable housing options and connected you with financial advisors who specialize in situations like yours. Have you followed up on any of those resources?" He looked uncomfortable. "We don't need charity or budget apartments. We need our daughter to step up and do the right thing." "The right thing isn't me giving up my home," I said firmly. "It's helping you find sustainable solutions." My mother joined us, eyes flashing. "How dare you show your face here after what you've done?" The gathering fell silent, all pretense of not listening abandoned. "What exactly have I done, Mom?" "Refused to give you my penthouse? Or called out the lies you've been spreading about me promising it to you? We are your parents. We gave you life, raised you, sacrificed for you." "Did you?" "Because I remember paying my own way through college while you paid for everything for Rachel. I remember building my business while you told everyone it was a hobby that wouldn't last. I remember offering to help you find appropriate housing and financial counseling, which you rejected because it wasn't what you wanted." The audience around us was dead silent now. My mother realized she was losing control of the narrative and switched tactics. "You're breaking my heart," she said, voice quavering. "My own daughter, turning her back on family." "I haven't turned my back on you. I've offered real help. What I won't do is let you take advantage of me anymore. I pulled out the folder I'd brought. Everything is still available. The housing resources, the financial counseling, my help navigating this situation. But my home is not on the table. Rachel, who I hadn't even realized was at the gathering, stepped forward. She looked between us, then addressed our parents. Is it true that you slapped Emma at my wedding when she wouldn't give you her penthouse? My mother faltered. She was being unreasonable. You don't understand the pressure we're under. I asked a simple question, Rachel persisted. Did you slap her? Silence confirmed the truth. Rachel turned to me, genuine regret in her eyes. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I was shocked, and then with the wedding. But that's no excuse. I should have stood up for you. It was the first real acknowledgement from anyone in my family that what had happened was wrong. The simple validation nearly brought me to tears. My father, seeing the tide of family opinion turning, attempted damage control. We may have handled things poorly, but the fact remains that we need help. Emma has more space than she needs. So do I, Rachel said suddenly. Tyler and I have a 5-bedroom house. Why aren't you asking us to take you in? The question hung in the air, exposing the fundamental unfairness that had always existed in our family. That's different, my mother sputtered. You're just starting your married life. And Emma is just starting to enjoy the success she's earned, Rachel countered. Why is my life more important than hers? It was the question I'd been asking. My entire life, finally spoken aloud by the last person I expected to ask it. My mother's face contorted with rage as she realized she was losing control. This is all your fault, she hissed at me, turning everyone against us with your lies. I haven't lied about anything, I said calmly. I've only shared the full truth that you've been hiding. We're your parents. You owe us. I owe you respect, which I've maintained despite how you've treated me. I owe you love, which I've continued to offer even when you rejected it. But I don't owe you my home or my dignity. I placed the folder of resources on the picnic table, beside us. This is what I can offer you. Help finding affordable housing, connecting with financial counselors who specialize in rebuilding after significant debt, and my continued support as you work through this. Not as a child giving in to demands, but as an adult helping other adults find their way. My father looked at the folder, then at me, something like reluctant respect flickering in his eyes. My mother only saw refusal. So you're offering us charity instead of real help, she snapped. I'm offering you tools to rebuild your lives with dignity and independence, I corrected. The same tools I used to build mine when no one believed in me. The gathering remained silent, the family verdict clear in their expressions. My parents had lost their audience, their narrative exposed as manipulation. I forgive you for the slap, I said quietly to my mother, and for the years of making me feel less than. But forgiveness doesn't mean allowing the behavior to continue. I love you both, but I need space and respect for my boundaries going forward. I said my goodbyes to the rest of the family, accepting hugs and whispered apologies from several relatives. Rachel walked me to my car. I've been blind, she admitted. They've always favored me, and I just accepted it as normal. I never saw how unfair it was to you. It's not your fault, I told her. They created the dynamic, not you. Still, I should have seen it sooner. Been a better sister. She hesitated. Do you think they'll accept the help you're offering? I glanced back at the house where our parents stood isolated on the porch, watching us. I don't know, but it's all I can give while still respecting myself. As I drove away, I felt the weight of decades of family dynamics beginning to lift. I had spoken my truth, maintained my boundaries, and offered help that honored both their needs and my own. Whether they accepted it was now their choice to make. 6 months have passed since that confrontation at my cousin's backyard gathering. The seasons have changed, summer fading to fall and then to winter, bringing with them a new perspective and unexpected healing. After the family showdown, my parents retreated into angry silence for several weeks. I heard through Rachel that they'd moved in with distant cousins temporarily, still refusing to consider the resources I'd offered. Their pride, it seemed, was more important than practical solutions. I used the time to focus on my own healing, finally addressing the decades of emotional wounds I'd carried. With the help of Dr. Melissa Rivera, a therapist specializing in family trauma, I began unpacking the patterns that had shaped my relationships and self-perception. "You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been freely given," she observed during one session. "The success you've achieved is remarkable, but part of you still believes it's not enough because they told you so." She was right. Despite my outward confidence, I'd internalized the message that I was somehow less deserving than Rachel, less worthy of unconditional love. Recognizing that pattern was the first step toward breaking it. Meanwhile, my relationship with Rachel underwent its own transformation. Free from our parents' comparative framework, we began rebuilding our connection as adults, discovering common ground we'd never recognized before. "I always envied you," she confessed during a lunch in October. "Your strength, your independence, your ability to build something from nothing." "You envied me?" I was genuinely surprised. "I thought you had everything." "I had everything given to me," she corrected. "It's not the same as earning it yourself." And there were so many strings attached to those gifts. Every time they paid for something, it was another way they controlled me. For the first time, I saw how the family dynamic had damaged her too, just differently. Where I had struggled with feeling unworthy, she had struggled with feeling dependent and controlled. "We never stood a chance as kids, did we?" I said. "They set us up as competitors instead of allies." "But we have a chance now," she replied, reaching for my hand across the table. "If you're willing to try." That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. We began a tentative but genuine friendship, checking in weekly and slowly building trust that had never existed before. As for my parents, reality eventually forced them to face their situation. The cousins they'd imposed upon had their own family moving in, and with nowhere else to go, my father finally called me directly in December. "We need to talk," he said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "About those resources you mentioned." We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between Boston and Connecticut. Both my parents looked older, tired, the strain of their circumstances evident in the new lines around their eyes. My father hesitated, clearly struggling with the words. "We've been unreasonable. The situation is worse than we admitted, and we need help." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father, it was unprecedented humility. "The resources are still available," I said, "including my help navigating them." My mother had remained silent until then, pride warring with necessity on her face. "We never meant for things to go this far," she finally said. "With the finances, with how we treated you. It just happened gradually." I understood more than they realized. Through therapy, I'd come to see how their own insecurities and fears had driven their behavior. The need to maintain appearances, the financial overextension, the preferential treatment of Rachel who followed their approved path. "I know," I said simply, "and I'm still willing to help, as long as we can establish healthy boundaries going forward." Over the next few weeks, I connected them with Lisa Martinez, my financial advisor colleague, who helped them create a realistic budget and debt repayment plan. I researched affordable senior living communities that would allow them to maintain independence while living within their means, and I maintained firm but compassionate boundaries throughout the process. They found a modest apartment in a pleasant community designed for active seniors, downsizing dramatically from the house they'd struggled to maintain. The adjustment was difficult for them, particularly my mother, who had defined herself by appearances for so long. but slowly they began to adapt to their new reality. Our relationship remains a work in progress. Some days are better than others. My mother still occasionally makes cutting remarks about my single status or career choices, but I've learned to let those comments slide off instead of internalizing them. My father has shown surprising growth, even asking genuine questions about my business and expressing pride in a recent development project I completed. Through it all, I've maintained my boundaries. I visit them monthly at their new apartment, but I no longer accept disrespect or manipulation. When old patterns emerge, I calmly name them and redirect, or, if necessary, end the visit. It's a delicate balance, but one that honors both my obligations as a daughter and my rights as an individual. Unexpectedly, James Blackwood re-entered my life in February. He called after hearing about the aftermath of the wedding drama through family channels. "I've been thinking about you," he admitted, "wondering how you were doing after everything." Our conversation flowed easily, picking up where we'd left off months before. He visited Boston the following weekend, and we spent a day exploring the city together, talking about everything from architecture to family dynamics to our favorite books. His understanding of complex family relationships, born from his own experiences as the Blackwood family outlier, created a connection that felt both rare and valuable. We've been dating for 3 months now, taking things slowly, both aware of the importance of independence after growing up in controlling family environments. When he visits, he admires my penthouse not as something to possess, but as a symbol of what I've achieved through my own efforts. Last month, I received a card from my parents, the first acknowledgement of my birthday in years. Inside, beneath, the printed message my mother had written. "We're proud of what you've built, Emma." Just that simple sentence, but from her it was monumental. I don't know if we'll ever have the warm, supportive relationship I yearned for throughout my childhood. Some wounds run too deep for perfect healing. But we're finding a new way forward, one based on mutual respect rather than expectations and demands. The greatest gift of this painful journey has been freedom. Freedom from seeking approval I may never fully receive. Freedom to define success on my own terms. Freedom to create boundaries that protect my well-being. In standing up for myself, I discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. My penthouse remains my sanctuary, the place where I begin and end each day surrounded by the fruits of my labor. But it's no longer just a symbol of financial success. It's a reminder of the emotional wealth I've gained by valuing myself enough to say no when necessary and yes to what truly matters. Tonight, I'm hosting a dinner party for my chosen family, Jasmine, a few close colleagues, Rachel and Tyler, who have become surprising allies, and James. As I prepare the table on my terrace overlooking the Boston skyline, I feel a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. The journey from daughter seeking approval to woman standing in her own power wasn't easy or painless. It required confronting hard truths, setting difficult boundaries, and weathering painful conflicts. But on the other side of that storm, I found something precious, the knowledge that I am enough, exactly as I am. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't respect your achievements or independence? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of standing up for yourself resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of finding strength through life's challenges. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is as important as the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gives you courage if you're facing similar struggles in your own life.